The Room Next to Mine. Chapter 4. The Space We Keep. Sunday morning light filtered softly through the curtains, painting gentle stripes across the wooden floor. The flat was hushed except for the faint hum of traffic drifting up from the street below. James was already up, pacing the kitchen barefoot, the cool tiles sending a shiver up his legs. He cradled his coffee mug like it was a lifeline, eyes flicking every few seconds toward Jack's bedroom door. "Oi, mate, you planning on sleeping all day?" he muttered under his breath. Finally unable to wait, he cracked the door open and peeked inside. Jack was sprawled sideways across his bed, duvet twisted around his legs, one arm flung across his eyes like he was shielding himself from the world. James knocked softly on the doorframe. "Hey, it's late morning." No response. The only sound was Jack's steady breathing. He stepped fully into the room, heart thumping just a little too fast, and tried again. "Oi, you alive?" Still nothing. With a sigh, he reached down and gave the duvet a gentle tug. Jack's eyes flickered open for a brief second, then shut again, as if even that effort was too much. James's patience snapped. He gave the duvet a firmer yank. A muffled voice came from beneath Jack's arm, low and edged with laughter, but unmistakably serious. "Mate, stop. I'm not wearing anything." James froze mid-pull, his heart skipping. "You're kidding." Jack cracked a half smile, voice rough with sleep but teasing. "Dead serious. Birthday suit." James's eyes darted down, then back up to Jack's face. "Bullshit." In response, Jack casually lifted one bare leg out from under the duvet, foot dangling off the edge of the bed, muscles shifting under pale skin. Heat rushed to James's cheeks. He dropped the duvet like it was on fire. All right, I believe you." Jack's soft, sleep-rough laugh filled the room. "You're impossible." James turned on his heel, desperately trying to act cool even though his ears burned crimson. Jack pushed himself up, hair sticking up in damp tousled spikes. His eyes lingered on James's retreating back, something warm and unreadable in his gaze. "Now," Jack called, voice low and almost gentle. "You want to make some breakfast? Or just stand there blushing all day?" James shot him a glare over his shoulder, but the corner of his mouth quirked up. "Breakfast sounds good." As he moved to the kitchen, the space between them felt charged, like the air just before a storm. Heavy, expectant, but full of unspoken possibilities. The smell of sizzling bacon drifted through the flat, mingling with the warmth of late morning sunlight slanting across the kitchen tiles. Jack stood at the stove, flipping a slice with practiced ease. The bacon crackled and popped, sending wisps of steam curling upward. Nearby, James poured orange juice into two mismatched mugs, glancing up now and then as if checking that Jack wasn't about to say something outrageous. "So," Jack drawled, tossing the crispy bacon onto a plate with a satisfied grin, "you gonna admit you've been thinking about my birthday suit all morning?" James rolled his eyes, but the faint grin pulling at his lips betrayed him. "Shut up. I was worried you were sick." Jack cocked an eyebrow, eyes glinting. "Sick of me or just sick of missing out on the view?" James let out a huff of soft laughter, shaking his head. "You're impossible." They sat at the small kitchen table, knees brushing under the edge, the occasional clink of cutlery punctuating the quiet. A comfortable silence settled around them like a blanket, warm and easy, interrupted only by Jack's teasing smirks and James's half-hearted glares that always ended with a reluctant smile. At one point, Jack leaned across, his eyes flicking to a crumb on James's sleeve. He reached out and brushed it away with his thumb. James caught Jack's hand on instinct, their fingers tangling for a brief electric moment. Time seemed to stretch. The warmth of Jack's skin burned into James's palm before he let go with a lopsided smirk. Neither said a word about it, but both felt it, a silent hum in the quiet kitchen, a truth neither dared to speak. The campus was buzzing with energy, a fresh wave of students, clubs setting up stalls, and the unmistakable hum of university life in full swing. Jack and James found themselves walking side by side between classes, their steps naturally syncing. "Got a group project coming up," James mentioned, glancing sideways. "Not thrilled about it, but I guess it's part of the deal." Jack shrugged. "I'm fine with that. It's more about who you get stuck with." James smiled slightly. "Yeah, hopefully not another nerd." Jack laughed. "Hey, I might surprise you." They passed a few familiar faces. Jack spotted some guys from his martial arts class and gave a quick nod. James noticed, but said nothing. As they neared the student center, a cluster of students gathered around a table advertising a hiking club. Jack's eyes lit up. "You ever been hiking?" James shook his head. "Not really my thing." Jack grinned. "You should come. It's a good way to clear your head." James considered it, then nodded. "Maybe." There was something comfortable about this easy back and forth, the way they could share moments without needing to fill the silence. But beneath it all, the unspoken tension, the fluttering curiosity, remained. Jack and James found themselves in a cramped seminar room, surrounded by other students, waiting for their first group project to begin. The topic was broad, something about business ethics and emerging technologies, which suited both their commerce subjects, but Jack wasn't sure where his law perspective would fit yet. As the group members introduced themselves, Jack noticed James scanning the room nervously. A girl near the window caught James's eye for a moment, but he quickly looked away. Jack said quietly, "You all right?" James shrugged. "Yeah, just trying to keep it together." Jack gave him a small smile. "We'll figure it out." The meeting started, ideas bounced around, and for once Jack found himself contributing in ways he hadn't expected, especially when discussing the legal and ethical angles. James caught his eye and gave a small nod. For all their differences, this, working together, felt right. The group meeting had ended, but Jack and James lingered by the campus cafe, each with a coffee cup in hand. James was scrolling through his phone, eyes narrowing at a message that looked frustrating. Jack glanced over, curious but careful. "You okay?" James hesitated, then sighed. "Just family stuff. Nothing to do with uni." Jack nodded, respecting the space. After a beat, James looked up, eyes meeting Jack's for a brief second. "Thanks for earlier," he said quietly. "For what?" "For backing me up in the group. You didn't have to." Jack shrugged. "I don't like seeing people struggle." James smiled faintly, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes but was genuine enough. A pause settled between them, filled only by the distant chatter of other students and the clatter of cups. Jack finally said, "If you ever need to talk or just get away from it all, I'm around." James looked at him again, lingering just a moment longer before nodding. Neither said more. But in that simple exchange, something shifted, a small step towards something neither wanted to name yet. A week after their group project started, James received an email from the professor. "Midterm presentation scheduled for next Monday. Groups must present their progress and initial findings." James's stomach sank. He wasn't ready. He looked over at Jack during their next study session in the flat. Jack was casually flipping through his notes, seemingly unfazed. James hesitated. "Hey, what if we don't have enough to show? What if I mess it up?" Jack looked up, meeting James's eyes steadily. "We'll figure it out together." But James wasn't so sure. Later that evening, Jack found James quietly pacing, frustration tightening his jaw. James finally blurted out, "I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Maybe I'm just faking it." Jack stopped and walked over. "Listen, everyone feels that way. It's normal." James looked down. "But I can't let you down." Jack smiled softly. "You won't, not on my watch." The weight of Jack's words settled, warming something inside James that was scared to admit it. They dove back into work, side by side, their focus sharper than before. The presentation was over. The classroom buzzed with murmurs and shifting chairs as students packed up. Jack and James stayed behind, waiting for the professor's feedback. When the door finally shut, Jack turned to James. "You did better than you thought." James shrugged, but the tightness around his eyes softened. "Thanks," he said quietly. "I was freaking out." Jack nodded knowingly. I could tell. They started walking back to the flat together. Outside, the evening air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of eucalyptus and distant rain. James hesitated, then said, "I don't usually let people see me like that." Jack glanced at him, surprised but gentle. "Guess you're an exception." James looked down, then up again. "You're not so bad yourself." A pause. Neither knew what to say next. Jack kicked a small pebble down the footpath. Finally, James smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. "Thanks for being there." Jack's grin was quiet but real, always. The next afternoon, Jack was at the student union, scrolling his phone, when he heard a familiar laugh. "Oi, Jack! Mate, is that you?" Jack looked up and saw Arjun approaching, backpack slung casually over one shoulder, grin wide. Arjun was the loud, confident type. Everything Jack wasn't. But they'd clicked instantly back in their first week. "Arjun," Jack said, standing up with a smile. "Long time." "Been around." Arjun shrugged. "Thought I'd swing by, see how you're settling." Jack glanced toward the cafeteria, where James was sitting alone, head buried in a textbook. "Hey, that's your flatmate, right?" Jack nodded, a little cautious. Arjun smirked. "Looks like you got company. Don't let him hog all your time, yeah?" Jack laughed, but felt a slight tug of unease. Not jealousy exactly, but something unfamiliar. Arjun clapped him on the shoulder. "Anyway, we're heading to the pub after class. You in?" Jack hesitated, then glanced at James again. "Maybe," Jack said. Arjun raised an eyebrow. "Don't keep me waiting." As Arjun walked off, Jack's thoughts drifted back to James, quieter, softer, and somehow harder to read than his boisterous mate. Jack sighed and headed over to join James. James looked up from his textbook just as Jack approached, Arjun's retreating back, disappearing into the crowd. He studied Jack's expression, a little distracted, a little uneasy. "Who's that?" James asked quietly, nodding toward where Arjun had gone. Jack shrugged, forcing a casual smile. "A mate from earlier this term. He's loud." James chuckled softly. "Yeah, I got that." He flipped a page, then glanced up again, a little hesitant. "Does he come round often?" Jack shrugged again, but a flicker of something, maybe tension, passed through his eyes. "Not really, but when he does, it's hard to ignore." James nodded slowly, processing. He found himself wondering what it was about Arjun that made Jack seem so different. Not worse, not better, just different. James swallowed the swirl of thoughts, reminding himself that Jack's world wasn't his, and that was okay. For now. It was late evening when James left the library, the campus mostly empty except for a few stragglers. He pulled his hoodie tighter against the cool air and took a shortcut through a dimly lit pathway he hadn't used before. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind him, quick, deliberate. James glanced back but saw no one. He picked up his pace. Then from the shadows, a figure stepped out, blocking the path. "Hey," a low voice said. James froze. The figure's face was obscured by a cap pulled low. "Lost something?" the voice asked, stepping closer. James swallowed hard, heart pounding. Just then a shout echoed from behind. "James, wait up!" Jack appeared, jogging toward him, eyes sharp. The figure hesitated, then melted back into the shadows. Jack reached James, breathing heavily. "You okay?" he asked. James nodded, still shaken. Jack looked around cautiously. Let's get you inside. As they walked back, James couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't random. Something was lurking beneath the surface of their quiet world. Back in the flat, the door clicked shut behind them. The soft hum of the city outside felt miles away. James leaned against the wall, still catching his breath. Jack paced near the window, eyes scanning the street below. That guy, I don't think he was just some random student, Jack said quietly. James looked up, meeting Jack's steady gaze. What do you mean? Jack's voice dropped lower. He wasn't someone you want hanging around here. Maybe watching. Maybe waiting. James swallowed hard. Do you think it's connected to the previous guys who pinned me down, or something else? Jack shook his head. Not sure yet, but we need to be careful. James glanced at the locked door, then back at Jack. Thanks for saving me. Jack shrugged. Wouldn't leave you alone. The room grew quiet except for the ticking clock. Neither said it, but the air between them thickened. A mix of concern, protection, and something unspoken growing stronger. The flat had gone still. James stood at the doorway to Jack's room, arms folded across his chest, hoodie sleeves pulled down over his hands. I know it's dumb, he said, voice quieter than usual, but I don't really feel like sleeping alone tonight. Jack looked up from where he sat on the edge of his bed, already in a t-shirt and flannel shorts. It's not dumb, he said simply. James didn't move for a moment, as if waiting for permission. Jack pulled back the blanket and nodded once. James stepped inside. He lay stiffly at first on top of the covers, facing the opposite direction. Jack lay back too, both of them silent except for the occasional car passing outside the window. Eventually, James shifted slightly. You ever felt like someone was watching you before? Jack took a slow breath. Yeah. Back home once. I hated the silence after. James nodded, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Jack flicked off the bedside lamp. The room dimmed to soft blue-grey shadows. After a long pause, James whispered, Thanks for not making it weird. Jack smiled faintly in the dark. You'd do the same. They both settled in. Neither moved closer, but the quiet breathing between them, steady, real, human, carried more comfort than either could say out loud. Somewhere deep in the early hours of the morning, Jack stirred. The room was quiet, the soft hiss of distant traffic the only sound. In the faint light filtering through the curtains, he became aware of a shift beside him. James, no longer lying stiffly on his side, had turned in his sleep. Now he faced Jack. One arm rested loosely between them, barely a few centimetres away. Jack didn't move. He watched the slow, peaceful rhythm of James's breath. His eyelashes twitched once, then stilled. Jack's throat tightened with something he couldn't name. Not attraction exactly, not yet, but a pull. A strange protective warmth. He turned away slowly, staring up at the ceiling. Don't overthink it, he told himself. They were just mates, just two guys. Sharing space, keeping each other safe. But as his eyes finally closed again, he was aware of every inch between them, and how strangely alive it felt.